Hello.
Hello, is this Mr. Lloyd?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Hey, this is Felix and Austin with Pipebomb Radio. Thank you for joining us tonight, sir. We do appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to start off. I'll kick it off with how you got your start in professional wrestling in general.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I kind of actually, I grew up being a huge wrestling fan, and I actually grew up in South Georgia, in a town called Brunswick, Georgia. And I was real fortunate that because I was only just real close to the Florida line, we actually were able to get like Georgia Championship Wrestling and Florida Championship Wrestling. So I got to kind of watch both of those, shows growing up, which is really cool. And then and then following this, when I was in high school, it was Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes. I mean, it was Harley Race, all those guys. And so I watched it through high school and went to college and was still a big fan. And I never really, I think as a kid, you dream of being a wrestler. I mean, if you're a big fan of it. And then, I never seriously, considered pursuing it until about the end of my college career. I played college football, and then they actually, I played at Valdosta State University, which is in South Georgia, and which just won their third national championship this past season, I must say. So in football, but I got to give them a little bit of a props there. But they were actually taping a little regional show at the TV station there on Saturday mornings, and I befriended one of the guys who was a wrestler named Fred Avery, who went on to be had a good career as a journeyman wrestler, and actually now is a high school teacher and coach and wrestling coach actually up in Atlanta, right outside Atlanta. And still a good friend of mine. And so even right out of the bat, he invited me and one of my best friends I played college football with to come try out, and he put us through the ringer, and it was an old, very, very hard ring, probably one of, if not the hardest ring I ever wrestled in, believe it or not. But back then, here I was. I mean, I didn't care. I was just kind of happy to be in the ring, and we went through the first tryout, and I can honestly tell you, up to that point, football was pretty much my life, and but in one instant, I mean, I just spent one day in the ring. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and so I finished. I graduated college. I started teaching school, and went through 5 months of very, very, very hard training. And I was fortunate enough at the time. I didn't consider myself fortunate. I was wondering what I got myself into. But I was very fortunate because even back in the late '80s, I mean, it's not like it is today where you could just go look up on the computer and find a place at a wrestling school. Yeah, and you literally had to be invited into a wrestling camp, and I was very, very fortunate. I mean, like I said, Fred was. He was a big guy. He was about 6'4", about 330 back then, and but moved well for a guy that big, and was a very strong amateur wrestler. Actually wrestled against Ron Simmons in high school, and they went to rival high schools, and I mean, so the guy who trained me had credentials, and he had he expected you to earn the right to call yourself a professional wrestler. So we did. I mean, we busted our hump for almost 6 months before we were able to get in the ring in front of a crowd and do our first match. So, and that shows how it all started.
And you also were given a name at one point, Sugar Ray Lloyd.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, what
were your memories on that?
I could tell you, it's very vivid. I tell you, I was very fortunate because, like I said, in Georgia, I mean, wrestling back then Georgia was a hotbed for wrestling, and there was a gentleman who's still a very good friend of mine. And that's one of the main things I could always say about anybody who's looking to get in the wrestling business is, is the relationships that you'll build over the years, and that's the thing I've taken most from my career is the relationships I still have with people who helped me out way back in my first couple of years. That back when I didn't hardly know a headlock from a padlock, but one of those guys that helped me was a promoter named Ben Masters. He ran an organization called Peach State Championship Wrestling, and early on we broke in as a tag team, me and my buddy from college, and so we were traveling and wrestling mostly as a tag team, and we got to know Wildfire Tommy Rich, who was on a lot of the shows that Peach State ran, and he just took a liking to us, and even particularly me, and then he invited me to come up and work some with Jerry Blackwell, who had just started Southern Championship Wrestling out of Atlanta, and so about a year and a half into the business, I turn around and I'm, here I am, and I'm in this organization where I know you guys may not have followed that back in the late 80s, but I mean, it was the place where everybody who wasn't under contract was there, and it was one of the places where I got a chance to meet, people and work. All of a sudden, a year and a half in the business now, I'm working with, Terry Taylor, Bullet Bob Armstrong, Abdul Glacier. One of the last places Bruiser Brody wrestled before he passed, and Eddie Gilbert, like I said, Terry Taylor, just all these guys were coming through. Paul Heyman, it was Paulie Dangerous at the time. It was just amazing, and Tommy Rich was one of the main guys on top there. And so before he brought me in, he called me up and said, "Look, we can't just be Ray Lloyd. We got to come up with something." And so he says, "I had this great idea. I'll call you Sugar Ray Lloyd." And I was like, okay, I guess I'll be the first white guy named Sugar Ray. I don't know, So, I thought that was, there's a couple of pretty famous boxers with that name, He's like, yeah, I know, but it'll work. And, the funny thing is, it stuck with me. This past April, 26 years in the business, and I say that very proudly because it's been a business that's been great to me. But the guys that I knew way back then, before the Glacier days, they still refer to me as Sugar Ray when they see me, which is kind of cool. So it just kind of reminds me of my roots and where I came from, and and I always try to remember the fact that I had very humble beginnings, and I think that's what helped me prepare for what was to come.
So getting into
now, I do actually have a question from Twitter real quick before we go off the subject.
Sure.
From a good friend of ours, Josh Long. He actually wanted to know who your fantasy opponent is and why. Why would he be your fantasy opponent?
You know what? There's a handful of people I never got a chance to wrestle who I would have loved to have wrestled. Obviously Flair would have been one. Just because I mean, who wouldn't want to say you wrestled Ric Flair? And I always hoped I would get that shot in WCW. It just never happened. And that's you don't always get everything you want. But I would have to say honestly, if I had to put someone at the top of the list, who's someone who actually I patterned a lot of the Glacier gimmick after, but I tried to take what I learned from watching him and make it my own so that people didn't think I was just imitating somebody. And someone that I've gotten to meet, briefly over the years, but I've never gotten to really know on a personal level, and I hope to sincerely one day. But I always have said that if I had one dream opponent, it would definitely just somebody I could share the ring with for one match would be Steamboat. I just think that would be really cool.
Wouldn't that be an awesome match? Wow.
Yeah, it's just, the guy is just, you think of, very, very few people in the wrestling industry can make an entire career, and just be, a babyface, good guy, whatever you want to call it, without really ever becoming the heel. They have to kind of sustain their career, and he never really did, not to my knowledge. And and it's just, we just watch his matches. You can't find a bad match. So yeah, that would have been my dream match. Yeah, he's I put him up there as just one of the very best ever.
And I'm sorry, Austin, you did have a question, and I cut you off there. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was going to say, getting into WCW, how was it? Well, actually, how did you get into WCW?
Well, you know what? It all happened really in an instant. And this is, I was just telling someone recently, I mentor a few young wrestlers, and I was just telling one of them recently how, that I always say, I did a seminar just a few weeks ago, and I always tell guys, it's okay to want the fame and the fortune, and if you get into wrestling, but you can't want that first. You really this has to be your passion, because it's literally 1,000,000 to 1 odds that you'll make it to the top level. It may be even greater odds than that, really. And I'd wrestled for 9 years on the independent scene. I was fortunate enough during a few of those years in the early 90s to go back and forth to Japan when I was off during summer vacation for teaching school. But 9 years, and my break had not come. And I was just like, well, okay. I really was at the point where I was like, okay, well, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I've had a great experience, and, I really don't have, a lot of regrets. And I'd gotten to know, of course, I was working out at Lex and Sting's gym in Atlanta where all the wrestlers were. All the current wrestlers and everybody who was trying to get in break through, you know, the WCW. And so I started working out there, and you know, and I thank my parents a lot. I mean, and some good mentors I had in my life up to that point. You know, they just instilled a really good work ethic in me, and you know, a lot of people saw that, and it's not something you go around trying to get people to notice, but I do believe when you see someone with a good work ethic, it shows, it shines through, and like I said, I don't take credit for that. I credit the people who, you know, instilled that in me. But one of the people that took notice of that was Dallas Page, Diamond Dallas Page, and he and I became friends, and then it was December '95. He and I were shopping in a mall in Atlanta for Kimberly's Christmas present, and we sit down to take a break, and we're eating lunch. And I said to, you know, Paige, Paige, I'm thinking about incorporating some martial arts into my gimmick. And he says, I'll never forget, as only Paige could say it with a mouthful of pizza, he says, bro, that'd be great if you knew some of that crap, but he didn't say crap, he said the other word. But that's Paige, only Paige could say it. And he says, you know, Bischoff's into all that karate stuff. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. And he said, he asked me, he said, you know, it'd be great if you knew some of that. That's what I do, Paige. I've been studying since I was about 15 years old. And he goes, I didn't know that. And I was like, well, of course not. I don't walk around advertising, you know, with a neon sign, you know. and so he goes, you know, Bischoff is into all that stuff. So anyway, he got some information from me and he says, yeah, let me talk to Eric and let me see what I can do, you know. So he goes, and of course back then they were neighbors. They lived about 2 or 3 houses away from each other, and you know, he talks to Eric, and you know, piques Eric's interest enough, I guess, to want to meet me and talk to me. So he said, well, let's get through the holidays, and you know, first part of January, you know, let's schedule a meeting. So Paige scheduled a meeting for me to go meet with Eric over dinner, and I actually was in their neighborhood, and you know, a steakhouse, and I can honestly tell you, I sat there, and Eric Bischoff grilled me about 3 hours, uninterrupted, with questions. And
wow.
I can't say for sure, but I think neither one of us got up to go to the bathroom the whole time. I was both like, I remember thinking, I can't get up. I'm not going to blow this moment. I'm going to stay right here. And I don't think he did either. But anyway, he asked me, you know, tons of questions about martial arts, about wrestling, blah blah blah. And of course, unbeknownst to me, you know, the higher ups at WCW, I think with Turner Broadcasting, had already started kind of like throwing some ideas, the questions to WCW, like, because the Mortal Kombat movie had come out, and they were like, hey, how can we kind of cash in on the popularity of this, you know, and can we kind of take that idea and bring it into the ring? And so, you know, I had no idea about all that, and really even at that time, Eric didn't even tell me really that night, but the coolest thing I do remember is that he said, well, let me ask you, so he says after we talked to, you know, and I won't bore you with all the details of the conversation, but basically at the end of the conversation, he said, you know, I like what I've heard, I want to sign you to a contract. Like that, boom, out of the blue. And I was like, really? And he says, yeah. He says, are you still wrestling on the independent wrestling scene? I said, yeah. He says, I want to pay you to disappear off the independent wrestling scene. I was like, what?
Wow.
He said, just disappear. Don't explain it to anybody. Just cancel whatever bookings you can without getting heat from any promoters. He said, but just disappear for the next few months. And
back then it was a lot easier to do that.
Yeah, you know, it was because I had built a great name in the Southeast, especially in Georgia, and just to like go away, you know, was kind of like whoa, you know. So you know, I just and he says at the time I was fitness director of a very, very nice country club in Atlanta, and so he was like, you don't even have to quit your job. He said just disappear, you know, and of course even though I was able to work my job for the next several months. We started the meetings, you know, as far as putting everything together and creating the concept and all that. So, yeah, that's kind of how it started. That's why I tell people all the time, you never ever know when that day's going to come, and it can happen that quick.
But were you actually, was WCW your first dream? Like, you know, shot at, it's what you wanted to go to, or were you just trying to take anything that you could get?
No, I actually, you know, I'm very big on goal setting. You know, I always have been. And like I said, I think having some great mentors in my life and coaches that set that up for me, I very much have worked a plan. I actually, and it actually caused me and my good buddy, was one of my good friends from college. I mean, we were in grad school. We roomed together in grad school while we were wrestling and everything. And there just came a point when I was in Valdosta, Georgia, in 1990, and I said to my buddy, hey, look, man, we got to go to Atlanta. If we're ever going to get, you know, WCW take a look at us, we got to be in Atlanta. They're not going to come knock on our door here in South Georgia. And, you know, long story short, he just decided he didn't want to take that leap of faith, and I did. And I applied for some jobs in Atlanta to teach school. I got one, and I moved in the summer of 1990. And my buddy and I split. And I will have to say, I mean, unfortunately, I think at that point it changed our relationship as friends, even, because of our different mindsets and our different goals. And it was very much my goal to go to WCW because, I certainly would have taken any kind of, offer. I think if WWF at the time would have been interested, but I grew up in the South, so WCW or NWA was that was it, and so in my world, that was the goal, was to get there. And so yeah, I mean, it was almost from day one. Well, I won't say that. The first couple of days, first couple of years of this, I was just trying to survive. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And like I said, once again, I had some great people to guide me. But once once the path was set, I mean, it was very much a goal that I had written down, and I was bound to do everything I could to make it happen.
So you make your debut on WCW Monday Nitro as Glacier. Now, looking back on that character, now I know, and I'm sure you get ribbed on this quite a bit. If not, you probably did. You used to anyway. Did you ever get told that it was a good comparison to Sub-Zero?
Oh yeah,
from Mortal Kombat.
Definitely. Yeah, and it was because of course, I mean, our whole the whole Love Runs Co angle was, like I said, was obviously because of the
popularity. It was actually a really cool
little
character there.
Yeah, honestly, guys, that's what I tell people all the time is like, because people say all the time, like, oh, things didn't work out. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. I have an electronic dartboard in my house, and every time I walk by it, it goes off. That's what that was. Sorry.
No worries.
I just, I mean, it was, did everything work out exactly like I hoped it would? No, but you know what? I mean, whose career ever does, But I can tell you this much. I look back on it, and I'm just a guy that, like I said, I've surrounded myself with some really, really good people. Paige being one of those people. I mean, Paige is one of the most positive people on this earth, and I got into what you got into your cliques at WCW, and I was in my clique was with Paige and Canyon and Kidman, and it was our group, and I just surrounded myself with positive people, and so there were things that, like I said, if I had written it, sure, it would have been a little bit different. But at the end of the day, this is the way I always tell people is, look back, okay, what did I get a chance to do? Okay, I signed in January of '96. I was there basically up until a few months before we were bought out by WWF or WWE in April of 01. I got a chance to be a part of, be an active member of arguably one of the greatest rosters of professional wrestlers ever. I mean, I was on the same roster with Hogan, Flair, Savage, Kurt Hennig, Eddie Guerrero. I mean, all these guys. And, it's just like, to walk into the arena every night and be accepted as a peer among those guys was, that was my definition of making it. They didn't necessarily have to do so much with just the Glacier gimmick. It was like the people I was able to surround myself with and be accepted into that group at that time, and then the fans accepted me. So it was it was an unbelievable. And for people, you're gonna have fans and critics. Everybody does. Every wrestler
absolutely.
Does. But the fans far outweigh the critics. And I always tell people, listen, be critical of it. I mean, that allowed me to take it and shape it and try to make it better. I welcome the criticism for it. Because a lot of the guys don't see it that way. They want to go off on somebody when they criticize about their gimmick. Listen, I would tell people most of the time when they would criticize something about it, I'd say, you know what? I agree with you. that's a good point. Let me see what I can do about that. So and some of it was in my power to do, but not. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. During the 1996 year, obviously that you started in WCW, I wanted to pose a question to you about Bash of the Beach in 1996. Were you there backstage during the whole NWO creation when it came to line with Hogan?
Well, I'll tell you what. Actually, Canyon and I were on our way to Daytona from Atlanta, and once again, my hometown is actually on the way, on down 95, north of Daytona, really. So you have to kind of go through there to get to Daytona. And so we weren't booked on the show, but we were originally instructed to be there that weekend. and we weren't told why. And but then as we went down, I can't remember what day it was, but it was approaching one of the day of the weekend, and I had some friends from my hometown, so we stopped over and actually to just kind of visit on the way down, and we got a call not to come down, and we were already on the road halfway there, and we were like, well, what's up? And they were like, well, we can't tell you right now, but this we don't need you guys to be here. And so we decided, well, heck, we don't have to go in there, so let's just, I'll stay. I made, just said, well, heck, I'll stay this weekend right here in my hometown, and we'll just kind of hang out with some of my buddies, and we'll watch the pay-per-view and see what happens, And then, of course, back then, the buzz was already about because of Nash and Hall already kind of, infiltrating and doing their little thing to start with. So, we're sitting there, and we're watching, and, of course, Hogan turns heel right there live and in color in front of us. And I'll never forget Chris Candy looking at the TV and not even looking at me, just staring at the TV and saying, well, there goes our push. because, and really, honestly, that's what I tell people all the time. Because I can't tell you how many times people say, well, gosh, you came out, you were kind of shot out of a cannon, everything went great, and it just kind of like, it fizzled out real quick. And I tell them, I go, well, guys, didn't you happen to see what happened during that time? There was something that came along called the NWO, and everything took a backseat to the NWO. Everything,
During that
no matter
time,
what was planned out before. Yeah, so, but once again, I was on that ride, so I got a chance to see all that firsthand, and I got to see a lot of stuff behind the scenes that most people wouldn't be privy to. So, like I said, I mean, I would have mapped it a little differently, but all in all, it was still a very cool ride.
What I wanted to ask you is, how was it like to do your entrance? Because your entrance is one of the most, like, it was off the charts, like one of the most unique entrances ever.
Or extraordinary type
extraordinary,
entrances.
That's the word for it.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for saying that. But, you know what? I mean, once again, I was explaining to somebody recently is, now, entrances like mine are almost common. It's like everybody has it now. But back then, I mean, I say back then, it wasn't that long ago. It was 96. I mean, you just didn't have dynamic entrances. I mean, mine was kind of the first one, really. And then, of course, Bill's came, Goldberg's came right after mine. And, and I mean, those were, they kind of changed the way entrances were, looked at. And, I can tell you honestly, I mean, I had no idea when I first started that was what was coming down the pike. I had no idea. And so when they built it up to that, it was a blessing and a curse because to come out, walk out to that entrance, and then have to follow that with a match. It's like I heard Arn Anderson tell me one time. He says, if you do anything less than walking on water, they're going to be disappointed. So it was great to have it, but it was a lot to live up to once the lights came up, and the snow and the laser stopped. So, but that was the one thing that was always pitched to us was they wanted us to go out there and be the heavyweights that moved like cruiserweights, but making everything look very believable. Eric was, for whatever reason, with us, and I'm glad because this is the way I am. I mean, I'm just a big advocate of things looking believable in the ring. Because the thing is, most people don't understand unless you've ever been in the ring. Trust me, guys, a lot of that stuff hurts. Most of it hurts, and so it's very believable to us in the ring. So why would you want to make it that way, for the fans? But the interest in itself was I always got so revved up off camera when the lights would go down and the music would hit, and it was I can't imagine anything else giving me that kind of a rush. I mean, it was just and when you're in a big arena full of people, it was just really incredible, really incredible.
I can imagine. And at that point, obviously, as you were saying, the NWO was really kicking steam and kicking butt and just taking names and just whooping WWE at the time. And the locker room atmosphere, at least during that time, did it seem like they were really going to take control of everything? Did you guys feel like you guys were not going to get any more of a push? What was the atmosphere like after they actually came out?
The funny thing is, during the day by day, everybody was fighting to keep their job. I mean, it was just that's just the mentality when you're at that level that we discovered very quickly is nobody's job's safe. So everybody day by day, you're just fighting for your spot, and once you get it, you're just fighting to keep it. And of course, that's the other thing about being, and it's not just the wrestling business. I think in entertainment business in general, people are always going to look you right now and tell you what they think they want you to hear, what you want to hear as far as what they have in mind for you and what they have planned for you. So, you have to learn to adjust to what you can believe and what you know is not worth believing. But
I agree on.
But I'd tell you the one thing that once again I give Paige a lot of credit. Paige's whole thing his argument was, hey guys, come up with some stuff and go present it to them. Because and that's the first time it was ever presented to me that way. Was, hey, look at all that these guys are having to come up with on a week-to-week basis. So make their job easier. Give them ideas. And so that's what
I'm
we
sure
did.
They appreciate that.
And and they do appreciate it. And so it was. But there were some other, factors involved. Certain people who I don't think were fond of the gimmick, and to be honest with you, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I don't know for sure who those people really were, but I just I've found out over the years that there were some people, and I've had some names put in front of me, but without knowing for sure, it would be it's not. I'm not the kind of person who's going to throw those names out there, but still that's the politics of any entertainment business. You're going to have those rumors flowing and stuff. So all we could do was give them ideas, show up every day, and do our very best never to have a bad match, which would give them ammunition to say, see, we don't need to be pushing these guys anymore. So it was very, very serious to us to go out there and have, when people say, oh, wrestling's just a show and, whatever. No, I can tell you honestly, for me, it was a competition. Every single night, I looked at that board and I saw the names of people I was having to go up against. And my job was to say, I got to have a match of that caliber every single night, because if not, they give them more reason to get rid of you.
Exactly. Now, share your thoughts, share your memories, something that you would like to share about your friendship with Chris Kanyon. Share some memories.
Well, first of all, I miss him dearly. I do, and Chris and I met, ironically, we'd never really met until all this stuff started kind of coming together. We had passed, in the gym and stuff and kind of knew each other, but then, once we were brought together with this is where things started to really, obviously we spent a lot of time together, as working for the company. So it was just, I think, a natural, and that was a big thing from Eric. He wanted all of us. He wanted the four of us. And really, Jim Mitchell Vandenberg, who I affectionately call Vandy, who is still a very dear friend of mine, and we both live in Orlando here in Florida. Was, hey, you guys have to become a unit. You have to become close-knit. You have to know each other like you know yourself, And so we did that. And Ernest, I think the world of Ernest Miller, Cat. But Ernest has always been kind of I don't want to say a loner, but he's always just kind of, been to himself. And even though he was still very much a part of the team atmosphere, that's just kind of how he was. And I didn't fault him for that. And Brian Clark was kind of the same way. Even though Brian and I, one time we came through the ranks together, so we were friends and we all hung out and everything. But there was just, Kanyon and I had a passion for the business. We sat down and we could watch tapes for hours just trying to get better and come up with ideas on how we could get better, how we could, do more to evolve our gimmick, And so I think it was a lot of that, just a mutual respect for each other because of how much we really, really wanted to succeed in this business. And not just that, but how much we wanted the business to be good. We wanted, because as fans, we just felt, we grew up as fans first. We wanted this business to be good. We wanted to be able to, I always say, I want to give the fans more than their money's worth, and he, I think, was the same way. But, and there was, early on, I noticed, that there were certain things about Kanyon that, just kind of made him very unique in ways somewhere, but I can tell you this much about him, and this is the thing that I always try to make sure people understood about him. The guy was terribly, terribly dedicated to his craft. He really was. Almost, I think, too much at times, almost like obsessed with it. But later in life, he had some issues, and I think when he finally came out to the public, about his sexuality, I think he expected not to be received well, and I don't know why, but that's the impression I got, and that was exactly the opposite of what happened. He was received very well, and people, kind of embrace it. Said, hey, that's okay. I mean, you are who you are. It doesn't take away from you what you've done in the ring and what you can still do. And I think he felt like that when he came out that somehow a lot of the issues that he happened to be dealing with would somehow maybe go away. Because he could kind of lift that boulder off of his shoulders. And then when that didn't happen, I think he really became lost as to where to turn to and what to do, and of course eventually, we all know what happened, and I just, I hate it. I miss him, as much as I cared about the guy. I don't mind saying, I'm ticked off about the fact that he's not here. I'm ticked off that whether he meant to or not, that's how things ended, because, I always say, that, the guy, like I said, is incredibly dedicated to the business, and he was a great friend of mine for a long time, and I think he had. I really think if he would have stayed and around and gotten help, like with Paige now being in Atlanta, doing all the stuff he's doing there, with Jake and Scott and all those guys. I went back last summer to help Paige make that move and get Jake over to Atlanta and all that. I think there would be a great spot for Canyon in the midst of all that, to where he could really kind of revitalize himself and his name and, whatever, but his reputation as far as being that dedicated professional. But we'll never know now, and so it's really disappointing. But overall, I just think he was incredibly dedicated to what he did in the ring, and I always say I have my best matches in my entire career with him.
All I got to say about that then is, who better than Canyon?
Yeah, absolutely.
One more thing about Canyon. When you wrestle, we actually recently talked too, or like when I asked when people come on here, we asked them the same question: how hard is it if they're wrestling somebody multiple times and in their career? How hard is it to come up with something new each time you wrestle them?
Can you repeat that, because I lost you for a second?
Like how hard is it when you're wrestling the same person almost on a nightly basis? How hard is it to come up with different material when you're wrestling that person every single night? Well,
a lot of people, I don't know if you guys remember, but one of Canyon's nicknames was the innovator of offense. I mean, he could come up with, and I will say, when you're around creative minds, I think you become more creative. So, I came up with some great ideas. He came up with some great ideas. And that's what you go back and, one of the things that I always point out is you go back and you watch some of the matches we did. I mean, we did some things that had never been done before in the ring, as far as heavyweights. And just some of the moves, Like I'm still, I do, the spinning leg sweep. I still have never seen anybody else do that, And, so but yeah, Canyon, he was just really great at coming up with, he was great at, like, going back and watching, another match from some other time or era and seeing something and taking that and then developing into something else that eventually may not even have looked like that to start with, but he got an idea from that. And, he was incredibly gifted to come up with original things. And he was good on the fly too. I mean, like I love about being in the ring with someone like Canyon. I mean, he was just, he knew the ring. He knew exactly where he was at all times in the ring, and he knew what to do in those positions when he was in the ring. If he was in the corner or on the top rope or outside the ring, I mean, he just knew, what his options were, and things just came to him very easily, as far as what the and you can't help but have a good match with somebody that has that kind of mentality.
Now, I actually wanted to touch on something that you took part in. Actually, you attended an event for the opening of the Nitro Grill.
Yes.
What do you remember about that? What was the atmosphere like? Did you feel like it was going to be something worthwhile, that maybe it would have lasted a long time? Because I know with WWE, when they ventured into WWE New York, or WWF New York, whatever you want to call it, it didn't work out too well. I mean, what were your thoughts as far as the Nitro Grill back then?
Well, I tell you what, I loved the atmosphere, the look of it. It was really, a cool thing. I mean, it was like it was Hard Rock Cafe for wrestling. That's what it was. And so,
I love that. Yeah.
But we went to the grand opening. I mean, you would have thought, hey, this thing just, the company sunk a lot of money into this, and I think it's like anything else. I mean, when they put it, the one hotel they put it in, the casino there in Vegas. I think it was, as I remember, it was one of the older hotels. I mean, it was on kind of like that main strip,
Excalibur?
Yeah, the Excalibur. Which I don't know if you've ever seen the Excalibur. It looks kind of like a, I don't know, like a fairy tale castle almost. It kind of stands out in Vegas. And that's hard to do in Vegas. So it just, to me, it seemed like a kind of thing that would have been better at like an MGM Grand or a Luxor or something like that. But maybe that's where they got the best deal for the space or whatever. But it was fun. The food was good. I mean, my favorite thing on the menu, just because of the name, was the Booker T-bone steak. I thought it was hilarious.
I like that.
Yeah, if there's one thing I wish I did have, I wish I would have had a menu. I would have kept the menu from there because they had some really creative.
Awesome.
So, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, I hate that, and I to this day I don't know what, really. I guess it was just when we finally, everything was kind of crumbling there at the end, But I was very impressed by the fact I had one of my ring worn outfits and one of my masks on display, and when it finally did close its doors. About 2 weeks later, I got my stuff FedEx back to me, and I thought that was really kind of cool. I didn't expect that. You kind of think that stuff might end up somewhere in the closet in some warehouse or something, But yeah, it was fun while it lasted. I guess that's the best I can say about it.
Understood. Now, you actually worked in a program with Perry Saturn. What was it like working with him? What was your best memories working with Perry?
Well, first of all, I'm really, really glad to see that Perry's back on track with his life, personally and professionally.
Amen to that.
Yeah, but I can always, once again, whenever I talk about Perry, with all due respect, Perry's one tough son of a gun, and I tell you what, I found out along the way how tough. I found out how tough I was, to be able to hang with him. But we always had good matches. It's at least I've gone back and watched several of them, and I think we always did. We always had a good mutual respect. The one thing that always meant a lot to me was whenever we were in the ring. It was always a good give and take. And there were times when Perry was getting his monster push, and even then. We still, it was still kind of a 50-50 match, throughout. And, and we always, we came up with some great stuff, and, but I can tell you this much. There was a lot of live rounds whenever we wrestled each other.
Perry's no punches and bull in that ring.
Yeah, and that's the only way, when you're in that position like that, you got to give it back. If you don't, then, it just doesn't look good if you don't give it back. So you have to, And I think the world of Perry. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing him here in Orlando now with the training centers here. I've kind of heard that he may be coming back on board with the training center here. So, but
awesome.
But don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure.
Understood. No, fair enough. I want to touch on. I'll tell you three names. I'm going to give you 3 letters, or I don't know if it's 3 letters or 3 phrases here. Well, anyways, I'm going to ask you about Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
Well, I can honestly say this. Overall, a great experience because my two childhood heroes growing up were Evil Knievel and Dusty Rhodes. And so, and ironically, when I was in WCW, I didn't get a chance to get as close to Dusty as I would have liked. We got to know each other, and really, during the whole Buzz Stern thing, when I did that briefly, Dusty was in creative control of all that. But then, right before we were about to debut, Dusty, left the company, and that's right when he started Turnbuckle, and and it was one of the proudest moments of my life when Dusty called me up and asked me to come meet with him about Turnbuckle, and basically asked me to come on board as like his as he called it, his lieutenant, to kind of oversee the wrestling school and then run the locker rooms on the shows, and Dusty was always the guy that had the final say on everything, obviously, but he kind of put me in charge of kind of the day-to-day operations of the guys and the talent and a lot of the stuff that had to do with booking the shows, and so it was a huge honor and a thrill, just because, like I said, here's one of the greatest ever, but not, like I said, just that being my childhood hero, too, and being able to get to know him on a personal level, which I still enjoy today. Oh, yeah. And then he's such a great character without even trying to be a character, and I learned a lot about him. I learned a lot about, the the different layers of it. And some of those are pleasant, some of those are, not so pleasant at times. I mean, Dusty can be an ornery old Texan when he wants to be.
The American dream, if you will.
But I respect him. I love him dearly as a person. I had a chance to work with Cody early on when Cody first wanted to get his hand, wanted to start, getting into wrestling, and that meant a lot to me that Dusty, trusted me enough to kind of work with his son. When he could pick anybody to, overall, Turnbuckle was a roller coaster, but I can honestly say at the end of the day, an awesome experience just because it was Dusty and the role that he really assigned me, with the company, and through all that, we became good friends, and we still are today. So that was awesome. It really was.
I actually got a question from one of the fans on Pipebomb Radio's Google Plus page. He said, "What was your favorite moment in WCW?" Yes or no?
Well, it kind of goes equally. I take it. I was about to say. I'll tell you briefly. My favorite match of my entire career was Bash at the Beach '97, when it was me and Ernest versus Kenyon and Wrath, and with Vandenberg there.
Mortis and Wrath, I remember them.
Yeah, it was. If you go back and watch it, guys, it was one heck of a match. I'm not saying that because I'm in it, but I just know everything that we were trying to do in that match, and a lot of it was extremely difficult to pull off. And you got to understand, we're in a match with Ernest Miller, who literally had, just a few months of training, and they threw him out there on TV, and everybody expected him to be as good as everybody else, And but that match was. I think everybody in the wrestling business. I certainly hope everybody that is in this business, especially at that top level, you wrestle your whole career for that one match that is as close to perfect as possible, and that was that match for me. It was just amazing. It was, without getting into all the specifics, it was just everything that we had possibly hoped it could be. It was, that it was one of the coolest moments. But I have to say, honestly, the coolest moment that ranks at the top for me was ironically one that never made it even to TV. It was when we were taping Thunder in Jacksonville, Florida, in Jacksonville Coliseum, the old Coliseum, which is they've since torn down and built a new one right next to the Jaguar Stadium. It was a dark match, the funny thing is, I think I was wrestling Prince Ikea, but that's the moment I don't remember. It wasn't important who I was wrestling. It was important to be in that building because as a kid, I have a twin brother, and my dad, I had great parents, and my dad would take us to watch wrestling in the Jacksonville Coliseum, and that's where my brother and I first, dreamed of being like NWA World Tag Team Champions like Jack and Jerry Briscoe because we saw them wrestle in that arena. And we had even as I grew up as a teenager, we had that certain area in the arena we would go when we go watch wrestling. And when we were there, and I came out and I got to do my entrance, and I was standing there up on the turnbuckle, I'm looking over in that section of where the kid I watched wrestling. That was I always say that was like my Madison Square Garden moment to me, because everything had kind of come full circle. I got a chance to live my dream, and perform in the arena that I'd never ever as a kid thought I would ever be in as a wrestler, and so it was. That's one of to me that's at the top of the list for me.
And people, I really like this quote. It's what is the point of being alive if you don't at least try to do something remarkable? And you've definitely done something remarkable with your life, and that's awesome.
Well, I tell you what, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. But I really, honestly, I tell people all the time, I hope I live to be a ripe old age. But if it all were to end tomorrow, I'd have one unbelievable run, and not just in wrestling, but wrestling has opened up a lot of other doors for me, and but now I'm really big. I do a lot of seminars, and I care. It's because I care. I make a modest little amount off of it, but it's just because I care about, I was mentored by, I say mentored, these guys mentored a lot of people, but Dusty took me under his wing during Turnbuckle time, but even in the early 90s, when I started wrestling in Japan, Lou Thez took me under his wing, and Lou really befriended me, and allowed me to kind of hang out with him, and I became good friends with him, and he became a confidant to me, and up until he passed away in 2002, and just to be able to have the opportunity to learn from guys like that, and like, and Larry Zabisco lives in my neighborhood here, and I run into Larry in the grocery store all the time and stuff, and to be able to, to kick back and just laugh with Larry, and like I said, and look at a guy like that and say, wow, how cool is it that this guy, respects me on a level that I'm allowed to kind of interact with him on that level. It means everything to me. I mean, prime example, this morning I woke up on Facebook, I had a private message from Tully Blanchard, who's coming to Orlando in a couple weeks. I mean, how cool is that?
How cool is that? That's definitely really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are the things that have really stuck out of how I have been very, very blessed.
Yes, you have. And I wanted to touch on something we've kind of talked about throughout tonight is your relationship with Paige. And I wanted to ask you about this whole DDP yoga thing. How did you come to get involved with this, and how did it come to be with you getting involved with this? I know you worked a little bit briefly with DDP yoga and Dallas as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I call Paige. I always say Paige is kind of like my crazy big brother. I have a twin brother. That's it. So I don't really have a big brother, but I've had guys come into my life that, like Paige, who are older than me, who have kind of become that big brother figure. That aren't old enough to be a father figure, but they fit well as a big brother figure. And Paige has always been that guy. And so I've watched Paige develop it from day one. And and I've always believed, Paige is a guy, who when he believes in something, it's best not to resist him. It's best just to go ahead and step to believe whatever. Just go along with it. Because he honestly is one of, if not the hardest working people I've ever known in my entire life, and I say that very proudly because this guy was the biggest long shot, in the wrestling business ever. And I tell every young wrestler, man, if you don't read Positively Paige, you're doing yourself an injustice because you think you got it hard. Read this guy's story. I mean, he broke in at wrestling at 35. I mean, Austin retired at 37 or 38. So that just it's like, but Paige started with this, and like I said, he started out of necessity. He really did. I mean, because of his own injuries, and he developed it. I mean, when he first started, it was called Yoga for Regular Guys, or what he called YRG. And it was getting okay traction, but it just never really was catching on the way he was hoping that it would. So finally, he decided to rebrand it, and I think it was an unbelievably smart move to rebrand it DDP Yoga, because anytime anybody mentions it, they're mentioning him, and it's a way of life for him. It really is. I mean, it's put him in a position now to reinvent himself. Not really reinvent himself, but just evolve to the next layer and level of what Paige is.
Exactly.
And he's. Paige wants to change people's lives, and he's found a great way to do that, and it's helped me. I'm diagnosed about a year ago with severe arthritis in my left hip, and so that's one of the reasons I went back to Atlanta to work with Paige, because I couldn't do a lot, and Paige really worked with me, and now I'm down here. I still have to have hip replacement surgery sometime here in the near future, and I don't regret that. Listen, like I said, it's not like I was shocked when I heard it, The one thing that my orthopedic doctor, I'm with the top orthopedic surgeon here in Orlando, she operates on all the Orlando Magic players, everybody. And I told her what I was doing. She said, "Well, keep doing it." She said, "Because by the time you do have to have that surgery, those muscles are going to be conditioned to where they'll be able to heal faster and rehabilitate faster, simply because of that type of movement."
Interesting.
So So it's out of necessity for me, but I also love doing it. I tell you, if you guys have never done it, it'll change your life, man. I'm telling you. It really, it's very, very good. And then, like you said, Paige took the spiritual stuff out of it, and he always says, it ain't your mama's yoga.
Yes, I love that slogan.
He always says it's yoga for guys who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga.
And I honestly have thought about giving it a try myself, considering I've done the weight training and so forth, and I feel like maybe there's something missing, and I've been contemplating it, going back and forth on it for months. And I feel like
I can tell you honestly, the best part about it is it will teach you how to breathe properly. It will teach you. It'll put your body back into balance, because you won't realize how out of balance your body is until you start doing some of these movements. And it will allow you to recover better. You'll sleep better. And I tell everybody in the wrestling business, okay, look who developed this. and you're in the pro wrestling business, why on earth would you not be doing this?
That's a great point.
He's
point.
giving you the blueprint to take care of your body. Why aren't you doing this? You know.
My last question I want to pose to you is, for fans who want to keep up with you and as far as what you're doing and so forth, how can they follow you? Do you have a Twitter, Instagram? Do you have a fan page? Follow you back?
Thank God I have a couple of people in my life who are much more technical than I am. So, but it's Twitter, it's I am Glacier, and a lot, I've got it set up to where usually when I post to my Facebook, it'll just post on my Twitter. So, my Facebook, I have a fan page, which I try to add. I think I've gotten that now linked into all that together. But I have a personal page, but I casually, I accept as many people as I can on my personal page, but I really do try to keep my personal page more for just people I actually do know, so that I can,
I respect that.
Yeah, and I'm actually, I'm really looking to set up for the first time ever, as amazing as it is, I haven't done this before, actually setting up a website, for my acting stuff and wrestling stuff. So, because I've been able to do a good bit of acting after wrestling, and still continue to do that. I'm actually now I'm working with a talent agency here in Orlando called Paradigm Group. I'm actually heading up their acting division now, so kind of getting to be on both sides of the camera, which is kind of cool. But yeah, just through that, and actually WorldWrestlingInsanity.com. It's a paid site, but it's only like $3 a month or something. And James Gutman owns that. We do a segment on there called Breaking the Ice, so it's kind of like my show for.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's really good. We cover a lot of stuff. I like the stuff you guys. I'm talking about you guys. I mean, I just I don't go around preaching that I'm some super positive guy, but I guess overall I am, because the way I look at it is that there are enough bitter guys in the wrestling business. I don't need to be another one of those guys. So so that being said, I appreciate you guys allowing me to come on, and I'd be more than happy to come back on anytime you guys would have me.
Oh no, we can't even thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule. And before we let you go, some your thoughts on today's wrestling, and have you kept up with it? What are your thoughts on the wrestling business today, WWE, TNA?
My thoughts are that, and it's I went to the the NWA Wrestler Reunion up in Charlotte, about a month ago, and I got a chance to talk to the guys like Dr. Tom Pritchard, Les Thatcher, those guys who I've been able to get to know really not till the last couple of years, but my thoughts are a lot like theirs. It's just like when the way the talent's developed now, it's just different, and I just don't think the talent is allowed to be as creative individually as they used to be, and they're almost instructed on what to do now, and same things like cutting a promo, and now they give them a script, whereas in the past, like Dusty was a big advocate of, hey, just get the high points and then let your personality come out, So I think that overall I think it probably suffers because we don't have that anymore, but I understand why they do it the way they do now, but I don't know if it necessarily makes it a better product, So Impact Wrestling, I was an agent with Impact Wrestling for back in 2004 and 2005, and I want that show to be good,
I do too. I do too.
Yeah, and you know what? And the wrestling fans do. God bless the wrestling fans, man. They'll hang on, and they're the most dedicated fans in the world, and they'll put up with a lot of stuff that's not up to par just because they hope it's going to get better, and like I said, that's a whole other show for us to talk about what I think will make it better, but everybody's got an opinion on that. So, and I don't know what all goes on behind the scenes that causes things to be put out like that, but I'm close friends with a lot of guys in both the companies, and it's just I think you got so many people now that are, like I said, the writers backstage now that used to not be the case. It used to be more your old veteran wrestlers that still had great creative minds, and there's still some of that, but it seems to almost be phased out or phasing out of that, and I try to watch the show. I got to be honest with you, I try to watch the shows, but it doesn't hold my interest. as like it used to. And yeah, so I don't necessarily, I don't come out like a lot of guys go, it's just crap, blah 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 blah. I don't think that.
No, of course not.
Yeah, but there are some guys that do. Guys, I get texts every Monday night. I get texts from my buddies just going off on something. I'm just like, all right, I know this is like a ritual. Every Monday you're gonna text me and tell me what you don't like about the show. But it's just like I said. I hope that both companies will be around for a long time. I hope there'll be more than that because I always want there to be places for the boys to work, and for the fans to see good quality wrestling, So I'm glad that both companies have gone more to that, to especially WWE. Let's face it, which is the flagship, is more of a family-friendly product now. I was not a fan of, even though I was kind of right there in the middle of the Attitude Era on both sides. I wasn't a fan of that. I don't think you ever need that to go there to entertain your fans. So,
Understood. You know what? We'll leave that for part 2. Stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah, for another time.
We'll definitely. We'd love to have you come back on maybe later in the year, maybe early part of the next year. But on behalf of Austin, I can't thank you enough for taking time to come on, and awesome storyteller, sharing your opinions, and you were very honest, and that's all we can ask for. We definitely appreciate it. We hope you enjoy your night, and
thank you so
much.
Well, guys, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And, like I said, I'd be more than happy to come back on any time. Thank you very much.
Much respect for everything.
All right. Have a good night, sir.
Respect.
Thank you, guys. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.